Hi guys, welcome back to Battle with Ola. My name is Mujola Olua and today we're starting a new series. There's always something new that we're up to on this channel. Today we're starting a new series where we're going to be looking at curious judicial pronouncements. Curious judicial pronouncements. Essentially what I want to do with this series is to just bring and read out portions of judgments that I find very interesting, very curious, very fascinating, where, I'm wondering what was the judge thinking? How did the judge reach this conclusion, Not necessarily the reasoning behind the judgment, but, the choice of words, the allusions, the hyperboles, the metaphors that have been used, the similes, things that are figures of speech that have been used in the judgment, pronouncements, how the words are carved and shaped and how sentences are formed, very fascinating things that you would hear and stop for a bit and say, oh, maybe hilarious or maybe interesting. What was the judge thinking? What kind of upbringing would have led the judge to write like this or to say something like this? That's what I want to be looking at in this series. And I'm still working on the title of the series, but just have it at the back of your mind that it's going to be about curious and fascinating judicial pronouncements. And today we're going to be starting with Anpp and Goni. Anpp and Goni. I'm going to be reading out to you the portion that I found curious. And I have had this portion in my mind since law school. That's several years ago. When we were doing election petition, it's a landmark case anyways. It's a locus classicus, in its own way, where the Supreme Court made a pronouncement on Section 285 of the Constitution, underlining and restating that section to say that, it's non-negotiable, it must, go this way as the Constitution has specified. So because it's not a judicial precedence series, so to speak, I would try as much as possible not to go into the backstory at all times. That is, we're not going to be talking about what really happened in the case, the facts of the case and all of that. That when we talk about when we do judicial precedence videos, there's a playlist called Judicial Precedence on the channel, by the way. I want you to go watch it. Go stream all the locus classicus and all the interesting cases that we've looked at. I love talking about and reading about judgments. So, but this particular series is not about that. This part is just going to be highlighting portions of the judgment that I find curious. Honestly, I would like you to join me on this journey. I've already done a reel. Oh, this is YouTube. I've already done a short where I had called for submissions, and I'm calling again with the starting of this series today, to say that if you have any such judgment that you find portions of it fascinating, please send them to me at houseoflivingstones@gmail.com. You just send the full citation of the judgment and the portion that you find very interesting, something you want to share with us. Maybe it's something we can laugh about, something we can just look at and wonder, where did the judge grow up? What faith is the judge of? What kind of interactions has the judge or have the judges been having in their lifetime that have informed, this kind of lines getting into judgments? That is what we want to talk about. It could be an abrasive portion where, you feel like, oh, those are very harsh words. It could be a hilarious portion where, you feel like, this is so funny. Whatever it is, if it's fascinating enough, share it with us on Battle with Ola. And I'm going to be sharing mine with you too. And I'm starting today with Anpp and Goni. Let me read out the portion that I find fascinating in Anpp and Goni to you. Anpp and Goni is an election petition case, like I have said, and it's a decision that was reached by the Supreme Court of Nigeria in 2012. So it's that's about 13 years ago. 13 years ago today, because almost 13 years ago thereabouts, because this is 2025, 1st of May. So that I'm recording this video on the 1st of May 2025. So that's about 13 years ago, thereabouts. It has been held by this court in a number of cases, including consolidated appeal numbers SC/141/2011, SC/266/2011, SC/267/2011, SC/282/2011, SC/356/2011, and SC/357/2011. Brigadier General Mohammed Buba Marwa and others, and Admiral Muritala Nyako and others, delivered on 27th January 2012, that the time fixed by the Constitution is like the Rock of Gibraltar or Mount Zion, which cannot be moved. That the time cannot be extended or expanded or elongated or in any way enlarged. That if what is to be done is not done within the time so fixed, it lapses as the court is thereby robbed of the jurisdiction to continue to entertain the matter. So that's the exact portion that I find very interesting. And I remember when we were learning election petition at Nigerian Law School, Kano, that year, I remember this stayed with me because of Mount Zion and Mount Gibraltar that were mentioned. Those two mountains were fascinating, especially Mount Zion, because I'm a Christian and I know I'd read about Mount Zion in the Bible. So I was wondering, how did these allusions, these things, how did they find their way into a secular judgment? It was very fascinating. But how can we explain this? What I see is the learned justices of the Supreme Court, lending credence to the sacrosanctness, if there's any word like that, of Section 285 of the Constitution, to say that the time that the Constitution has said that an election petition can be heard within cannot be enlarged. Usually you'd ask for extension of time, enlargement of time, if you've run out of time. But it's saying that in the case of election petitions, you cannot ask for such. That time cannot be enlarged or extended. Once it lapses, that is it. The tribunal loses jurisdiction to continue to hear the petition. Very important. And I say that this is important because, we must move on. The polity must go on, and, governance must go on. If people had all day, all year, all month, all weeks, and all centuries, as the case may be, to prosecute election petitions, it would just be like ordinary cases. And, there are cases that go on for 10 years, 15 years, 18 years. And then before you know it, the person that is already in government has finished the tenure, and now you're coming back to say, oh, the court has now decided that this is the person that won. So is that person now going to start their own governing or governance? So it upsets a lot of things in the ecosystem, in the political ecosystem. It imbalances a lot of things, and that's why the time frame for the filing and the hearing of election petitions must remain and have remained sacrosanct in Nigeria. Now, when you look at the mounts alluded to, you know that typically the most important characteristics of a mountain is that it is immovable, unshakable. Look at the words that were used. It said, which cannot be moved. It is like the Rock of Gibraltar or Mount Zion, which cannot be moved. Mount Zion in particular, when you look at Psalm 125, for instance, I used to live with a family where for about 1 whole year, every night we recited Psalm 125. So I know it like the back of my hands. The first verse says, those who put their trust in God are like Mount Zion, which cannot be moved. That's the first line. You can confirm it. Those, in fact, this is the way we used to read it. They that put their trust upon the Lord are like Mount Zion, which cannot be removed. As the mountains surround Jerusalem, so the Lord is round about his people from this time forth and forevermore, and so on and so forth. So that allusion is very correct and very apt, to have been used by the justices of the Supreme Court to say that the time fixed for an election petition cannot be moved, just like a mountain. You can use this in your daily life, just spice up your vocabulary, make it interesting. Now, let's look at that particular section of the Constitution to buttress the interpretation given by the court. If you look at section 285 of the Nigerian Constitution, especially subsection 6, it says that an election tribunal shall deliver its judgment in writing within 180 days from the date of the filing of the petition. So that's a very clear section of the Constitution. And remember that the Constitution is the ground norm, so it takes precedence over every other law, over any circumstance. So in this particular case, Anpp and Goni, was a situation of, oh, you abandoned your petition. I didn't abandon my petition. Then there were several appeals and appeals and appeals. And then at some point, the Court of Appeal ordered that there should be a retrial. So Anpp then went to the Supreme Court to say that asking that there should be a retrial when the time provided by the Constitution has already lapsed is contravening the Constitution. You can't ask for a retrial because the tribunal already lost jurisdiction to try the petition outside of 180 days. So the Supreme Court agreed with Anpp to say that yes, in this particular case, the Court of Appeal cannot order a retrial because all of this period has already come out or stepped out of 180 days as prescribed by the Constitution. So, and the provision of the Constitution is sacrosanct and cannot be derogated from. And so, the tribunal has lost the jurisdiction or the power to even retry this case, despite what the Court of Appeal had ordered. So there was an overriding judgment by the Supreme Court to say no, to disagree with the Court of Appeal. So Anpp and Goni, Mount Gibraltar, which is with us today, and Mount Zion, which is in the Bible, to say that the time fixed, prescribed for the trying of an election petition from filing is 180 days, and nobody can change it. No circumstance can change it. Not even the Court of Appeal can change it. It is immovable, unshakable, cannot be extended, cannot be expanded, cannot be enlarged like Mount Gibraltar or Mount Zion. So send me your interesting judgment until I come your way in another episode where I'll be looking at another interesting portion of yet another judgment. I am Mujala Olua. Toodles!